Good evening and welcome to the January 22nd, 2019 regular meeting of the Mayor and City Council. First item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like to invite Jared Harris to the podium to lead us in the pledge. If everyone could please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Next item on our agenda is reflection. I'd like to call for a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Next, we have approval of minutes. Tonight, we have one set of minutes to approve that is from the work session on Monday, January 14th. What is the pleasure of the council?
Move approval.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, carries 5-0. Thank you very much. Next, we have appointments, and tonight we have one appointment before us. What's the pleasure of the council?
Mr. Mayor, I'll move the resolution confirming your appointment to the Economic Business Development Committee of Nora Fitzpatrick for a 3-year term ending on the 1st of January 2022.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries 5-0. Nora's not here, is she? Okay. We will have to thank her when we see her. Next, we have public comments. This is the time when the Mayor and Council would like to hear from anybody who
Tom,
like.
is that correct?
That
She's not on that committee. We
It's
have somebody else.
Is it Nadia Khan that's supposed to be nominated?
Yeah, she was on a different committee
She was
appointed
on
last time.
the CA Community Advisory Committee, right? Didn't we
I'm not
appoint
sure
her?
it was Nadia Khan. That was for economic and business
Well,
development.
Must have
Okay.
been a typo.
Won't Nora be surprised?
Well,
She's
Do we-
now
do we
on
have
it.
to
have you?
move
Have
for
you
removal now?
yeah. Well, no. I mean, Mr. Mayor, have you nominated Nadia Khan to be on the committee so that we? Can,
I'm sure I have.
Okay.
It's not in the.
Right, Tom? I did.
Yes, you have.
Yeah, I'm sure
All
I
right.
did.
So then we can move a resolution confirming the appointment of Nadia Khan to the Economic and Business Development Committee for a 3-year term to expire in January of 2022, and I so move.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that carries 5-0. You now have 2 new members.
Yes, you should also do a motion to rescind your prior.
Okay.
I'll move to rescind my motion to approve Nora Fitzpatrick for
Due to clerical error.
due to clerical error.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Well, we thank Nora for her service anyway, but just for a different.
We did appoint Nora at our last meeting.
Yeah,
to
it was just for a different
I think
committee.
it was the Community Advisory Committee, I
Yeah.
believe. So,
Just a typo.
Yeah.
but I will let Nora know that it's nothing personal from the members here, since most of us up here are good friends with Nora. So
We are.
Yeah, okay.
Should she get a certificate or something?
Next we have public comments. This is the time when the Mayor and Council like to hear from anybody who'd like to speak on any topic
Come on up.
that is not a public hearing topic. We ask that you keep your remarks to no more than 3 minutes. State your name and address or neighborhood for the record. When your time is down to 30 seconds, the timer will beep and turn yellow, and when it's up, it'll beep and turn red. And please, go right ahead.
Good evening. My name is Kamino Bell. I'm a Gaithersburg resident. I'm 6 years old. I appreciate the opportunity to share my ideas and personally meet you. I am so passionate about giving back to others and raising awareness about things that affect our community. And today, I want to talk about bullying. I'm in kindergarten. I had some trouble with bullying, and so did my mom when she was little. I think this topic should be discussed. And if we don't stand up to bullying and pay attention to how it affects everyone, we may never get it to stop. And what I want to ask you is if February 21st can be Gaithersburg's official anti-bullying awareness day. That day is very important because it would affect Gabriel Tai's 11th birthday. Gabriel is a friendly and kind 8-year-old who who lived in Ohio, and he was bullied and tragically took his own life. So I want February 21st to be Gaithersburg's Anti-Bullying Awareness Day in his honor. I want Gaithersburg to be a city that is quick to help but not to judge. And I hope every February 21st would pause and reflect about we spread positivity and love to each other. Thank you for being willing to listen and for me to be the first to say bullying ends with me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow.
Let's give her a round of applause.
Well done.
Yeah. We really appreciate that testimony. Before we sort of respond to it, let me just ask: do we have any other testimonies? Who wants to follow that? I should say. So so you're talking about February 21st, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'll talk about it with our city clerk, and we'll see what we can do. Thank you. Okay. So seriously, no one else wants to. No more public comments. Okay. Then we will move on from the mayor and city council, and we will start with council member Neil Harris.
All right, thank you, Mayor, and I don't know if I want to follow that. That was pretty impressive for a 6-year-old, let alone for a grown person. All right, so I'm going to keep it very brief. I attended the Transportation Planning Board meeting down at COG, and I'm going to keep that very brief because there wasn't any major business discussed, but still moving forward on reducing the rate of congestion, increase in traffic over the next 25 years. A few years ago, it looked like we were going to be 72% worse in congestion, which is hard to conceive. We're down to something in the mid-20s, which is still worse than it is today,
Right.
but at least it's getting less worse. And hopefully someday I'll come to you and say it's actually going to be better someday, but we're not there yet. Attended the Leadership Montgomery monthly session of a year-long program that I'm participating in. This month, the focus was on education. It was held at the Tilden Middle School, and we had a number of speakers, including the principal of Tilden and one of the teachers who were both very impressive, and a panel of people from MCPS, including school board member Shebra Evans, who also gave great testimony and great answers to some difficult questions, trying to figure out how to get the best for our kids in a difficult climate, especially budget-wise. And finally, along with the rest of my colleagues here, we attended a legislative reception sponsored by the Maryland Municipal League. The city of Gaithersburg was a co-sponsor, had a chance to meet with our legislators as they start the new session and lobby for the things that are important to Gaithersburg and other municipalities. So like I said, I'm going to keep it brief, so that's it for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Lorianne.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. I just want to welcome our newest member of the Economic Development Committee, Ms. Khan. I'm looking forward to working with her over the course of her term. It's been a busy couple of weeks. The year's been off to a very busy start. As Neil mentioned, we were in Annapolis to kick off the legislative season. As a member of the Maryland Municipal League's Legislative Committee, we'll be in Annapolis bi-weekly tracking legislation, and our top priority this session is going to be ensuring that municipal authority isn't preempted by other levels of government. We attended the Montgomery County, Maryland's municipal chapter dinner. We met with the Montgomery County Chief of Police, Tom Manger. He's been our Chief of Police for, 15 years now, and has a lot of experience and a lot of needs that are growing as we continue to grow. I mentioned at the last meeting that we are the fastest growing city in Montgomery County, and with capacity, additional resources are needed to keep our community safe. I also attended some events for the MLK Day of Service the entire weekend. was filled with events. I joined some of my colleagues to staff the giant food stores in the city of Gaithersburg. We were collecting donations on behalf of Manna Food. About 17 of our colleagues from across the county joined us over the weekend. We also participated in one of 5 days of service that were hosted across the county. I attended a session, a workshop of teens helping our seniors with their technology, with their cell phones and programming their computers. So I'm hoping that we can share some of those resources coming up. Speaking of other events I attended, the city also hosted a Forever Sisters and Courageous Queens lock-in with MCPS students this Friday. And I joined our legislative manager, Monica, for the shut-in, and it was a really nice evening. She shared her story of grit and determination with the students that were in attendance. So I just want to give a shout out to Maura and her team for hosting a really good event. We also had residents from Wells Robertson share their stories. So it was just a really good evening. So I'm just happy that the city is supporting events like this. But I did hear, we had a Q&A after that discussion, and I heard from some of the attendees that they wanted some health opportunities on this side of the city. We have our farmers market that comes on Thursdays on the east side of Gaithersburg. On Saturdays, there's the farmers market in the Kentlands, but some residents don't have access to travel to that farmers market, and so they asked if we could explore maybe having a farmers market on the weekend here instead when more residents are home and able to access. Currently it's on Thursday afternoons, and it poses a challenge for some of our residents. So we just can talk with staff about looking into another day or additional day or changing days. How would we?
The Old Town, I've not checked in for at least a year, but the Old Town Farmers Market is distinct from the Kentlands one. We run the Kentlands one, but the Old Town one is actually run by the county's Office of Agriculture and their farm cooperative.
Okay.
At least it was last year, but I will check.
Okay.
And see who runs that and whether we could make a pitch to them. The farmers actually go to multiple markets.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand the down county ones are a little bit larger, and some of them go to them. So
Okay.
you have to have 4 or 5 farmers to actually can make it work. But I will inquire, and
Okay.
no harm in asking.
Yes.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you, Tony. Okay. So that is all. Lastly, February is Heart Health Month, and so look out for our February 11th meeting. We'll be joined by our county's public health officer, and he'll present information on health disparities in the city of Gaithersburg. It'll be a condensed version of the county-wide study that he produced last year for the county council that looked at health disparities down to the zip code. So he'll be doing city-specific data when he comes next month. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorianne. Right.
Thank you. Good evening again, everyone. And just another shout out and salute to our young citizen who testified earlier this evening, did a wonderful job, and I'm sure the city will find a way to commemorate and participate in anti-bullying awareness. I think it's a very, very important cause, and so stay tuned for that from the mayor and from the rest of us. It's already been mentioned that there were a number of events to commemorate Martin Luther King Jr. Day in the city and around the county. And as many of us already know, one of Dr. King's most famous and important quotes, among many, was that life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? And I think we're all very proud and humbled to have the opportunity here in the city of Gaithersburg to do what we can to help serve others and to continue with this tradition of using the holiday that commemorates Dr. King as a way to serve others and as a way to give an opportunity for members of our community to engage in service. And so, as others have said, we hosted, in conjunction with Seneca Creek Community Church and also the county's program, a number of really wonderful activities here in Gaithersburg. On Monday, I know most, if not all of us, attended and participated in a number of those activities. Some of us brought our families and our young children to participate as well, whether it was making items for children who are in long-term hospital stays, or for seniors who aren't mobile, or for folks suffering from various illnesses, or recognizing and thanking those who serve us every day, like teachers and firefighters and police officers and other first responders. It was just a really good opportunity to engage in a lot of activities. So thanks to everybody who was involved, all the volunteers and organizers, for giving us that opportunity. It really was a successful event. Separately, I know that, as Lorianne mentioned, a number of us participated in the food drive with participating giant grocery stores. Mayor Ashman was out there on a cold Saturday collecting food donations from Manna Food Center, and I joined him for a little bit, but he's the one who stayed out there for a long period of time on the cold day and filled up all 5 of those shopping carts, which was his goal. So
5 carts. I want to know what Van Hollen got. I'm a little competitive about this.
Yeah, but it was that was a great success as well. And even though not on Monday, it was still part of the whole long weekend of activities to engage in service. And you know, we always have those in need in our community, but given all sorts of recent challenges, including with the federal government shutdown, there are even more in our community who are going through some tough times, at least in the short term, and we need to continue to do what we can for them. I also had the opportunity last week to visit a group at Asbury Methodist Village, just to talk to them a little bit about recent events and programs at the city. It was a good discussion and some good questions. That community, because it is very close to Lake Forest Mall, had a lot of questions, as they often do, about what's going on at the mall, and I was able to provide some updates thanks to Britta and Tom Lonergan and staff, who provided me with some more information about the latest and greatest details about what's going on with the property owners at the mall. And then also just want to follow up on what's already been said about a number of activities involving the Maryland Municipal League, of which we are active participants. It was mentioned that we had a reception. It's our annual reception for the opening day of the legislative session in Annapolis. I think all of us were there, and there's a great opportunity for us to interact with our state legislators and let them know what our local priorities are. We'll continue to work on that. As Lorianne mentioned, we had our monthly chapter meeting of the Montgomery County chapter of the Maryland Municipal League, graciously hosted by Somerset, where we got to speak with Chief Manger. And then I just also wanted to mention that this coming weekend I'll be participating in the Board of Directors annual retreat for the Maryland Municipal League. It's the statewide board, but because Mayor Newton from Rockville is currently serving as the president, the retreat will be local. It will be in Rockville, and we'll have the opportunity to get together and do some strategic planning for the Municipal League in the coming year. And that's all I've got this evening. Thank you.
And next year in Gaithersburg,
And
right?
next year the retreat will most definitely be in Gaithersburg.
Thank you, Ryan. Mike.
All right, I'm not going to repeat everything that's been said, but I do want to remind everybody that while we celebrated or observed a day of service yesterday to remember the inspiration and service of and commitment of Dr. King, I think it's important to remember that we don't have to limit our service to our communities to one day a year. We can do that every day of the year. There's lots of different ways to do it, so I would encourage you to find those ways and contribute in that way. So that would be the most important way to remember the contributions that Dr. King made to our society here. So other than that, all I want to do is so this last year on this day, I was a furloughed federal employee. This year I'm not, because my agency was funded for the first time in 22 years, actually had a budget for the entire fiscal year on October 1st. But I have a lot of friends and colleagues, co-workers who aren't working for my agency, but are also furloughed. if you happen to travel these days through an airport. The TSA agents are there working. They're required to work. They're working without pay. Hopefully, they'll get paid back. I believe that the president actually signed the bill that was passed by both houses to pay back the federal employees for this missed salary and missed paychecks. But the people who aren't getting paid back might be contractors who work for the federal government, and they're not official federal employees, but they do much of the work that the federal government gets done under the auspices of the government. So, along with other cities, municipalities, and Montgomery County, the state agencies, et cetera, a number of programs to assist furloughed employees and contractors have begun. And in fact, even the Manna Food assistance and contributions to food banks have been used to help those furloughed employees. So contribute if you can, and contribute generously if you can. Thank those that might be working without a paycheck. But also, if you happen to be a resident of the city and you're a furloughed employee or a contractor, we've waived fees for some of our recreational programs, and we've also we have some resources as well that are available to you if you're furloughed. So if you can benefit from these, we're glad to help you, and they're glad that you can benefit from that. If you know somebody, if you're not under this this situation, if you're not a victim of this situation, then certainly you can tell your friends and neighbors that you might know who might need this assistance, that you can have it. So there's lots of ways to get help, and the city can help be a resource for that, but so the county government as well. So just want to remind you of that. That's another way that you can contribute to your community, provide service to your neighbors. Thank you. That's it.
Thanks, Mike. Rob.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to say that I hope everyone had a meaningful Martin Luther King Day, had the chance to reflect on the meaning of the day, and as Mike said, you know, it's not the only day that you can give back to your community. As citizens, we should try to give back every day we can. You know, I spent the last week down in Austin for my day job, and so I had the opportunity to witness firsthand the consummate professionalism of these federal employees who are not getting paid due to the furlough. And so I made sure to tell them then that I appreciate it, and I just state now that I appreciate what they do in the face of what's going on. So I'll just say that. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you, Rob. So I'm not going to repeat what everybody said. It was I will just note that it was a great pleasure to have the opportunity to do these volunteer exercises with Manna and with Seneca Creek Community Church. Also, I'm very happy to report, as I reported a couple weeks ago, that I was able to have a meeting last month with Governor Hogan, and during that meeting discuss a number of ways in which the state could be helpful to the city of Gaithersburg. We had our main ask was $2 million to help with the build out of our new police station, which is across the street. The whole total project is going to be somewhere in the range of $16 million, right, Tony? Mm-hmm. And last week, the governor's budget came out, and I'm very, very happy to report that he did include $2 million in his budget for our police station. So I think it's an enormous win for the city of Gaithersburg. I'm really, really happy that they were generous like that, and look forward to getting that project done. So with that, I will just note we have we do not have a work session on January 28th. The next regular session of the mayor and city council will be held on Monday, February 4th, right here, 7:30 p.m. at City Hall, and we'll move on to From the City Manager.
Thanks, Mayor. Just building on Mike and Rob's comments about TSA, I also flew back last week, and it is remarkable the camaraderie and the professionalism of the TSA at this time. It reminded me that you all had passed a resolution waiving fees. I want to thank staff for working on that. I understand we've had a few people that we've notified of the fees, but at least one turned us down, saying that they would pay for now, but the information's getting out there, and It was a really nice gesture, I thought. A couple years ago, we put the annual budget survey online, and we got about 160 responses. And at the time, I said that's about the same number of people that come and testify in a whole year, so it seemed really good. But the next year, when we got 65 for the entire run, I'm happy to report we have over 300 now for this year.
Fantastic. It's really great.
Can't really explain why that is, but maybe more people have time on their hands. But it's gratifying. We changed it up a little bit, some of the questions, the structure of the questions, and getting a lot of responses. It's still open, so if anybody's interested in participating in the budget survey online, I believe they still can. And then a capital project that had been making the rounds a few months back is the traffic circle at Main Street and Kentlands Boulevard. That did get slowed down a little bit because it turned out that the actual decorative poles and heads of the lights on Kentlands Boulevard are part of the plan for the community. And there was no manufacturer listed on the poles. But we have worked that out, figured out what to do. The staff can approve a different type of pole, but the project is now live, and we will be upgrading those lights pretty soon. They will be very noticeably brighter in that circle, and there'll be a little bit of a lab to see how that works and how it's received. The light will be much more direct and much less yellow than it is now. So that's moving forward. And that's it.
Thank you, Tony. We move on to economic development with Tom Lonergan.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. Just a couple items I want to mention. I've heard a lot about opportunity zones. We hope to talk a lot more about them on a tour that we are co-sponsoring with our partners at Montgomery County Economic Development, as well as from the Federal Reserve Bank of Richmond. This is an all-day event that we will be co-hosting at the AFI Theater in Silver Spring. It is for the countywide program, so it's not limited to Gaithersburg, but Sharon and I will be on hand to talk about the 3 census tracts, the opportunities here in Gaithersburg, and to be leading a bus tour. There will be different tours going out to the different opportunity zones. We will be in charge of that one. So thanks to those partners, invitations are going out to several target groups in the development and investment communities, which we consider to be the ones that would benefit most by having the most knowledge of this program. I'll keep you posted as details are finalized, but again, February 5th, day long, starting at 9 o'clock in Silver Spring. Also a reminder that this Friday, the 25th, at 7:45 a.m. at the Kentlands Mansion, we will be hosting our annual Economic Development Committee breakfast. Our new county executive, Mark Elrich, has graciously accepted our invitation to be this year's keynote speaker. It is open to the public, no cost, but we do ask that those who are interested please RSVP through the Economic Development Office, 240-805-1093. And finally, Mr. Mayor, I understand there was a request as well with the governor about some new welcome signage to Gaithersburg. Long before that pledge, way back in 2014, some of you on the dais may remember, there was a time when the city had submitted an application to State Highway to potentially participate in what they call their TAC, Tourist Area and Corridor Signing Program. That's the brown signage that you find along the interstates and the state-maintained roads. Included in our application were sites in Kentlands and Old Town and Rio and Crown. Ultimately, most of those sites for which we sought were actually rejected by SHA, citing a multitude of reasons why they didn't qualify, mostly because of visitor counts and hours of operation. But even with the rejection of the TAC application, the state did agree, back in 2014, to modify signage along I-270 from Gaithersburg Town Center to Old Town Gaithersburg. Last week, there were finally signs that that promise is being kept. I don't know if that has shown up yet, but the first of those signs did go in last week. I have been working with a rep at SHA to finally get this installed. That's just the first. This is on the exit ramp from 270 South onto Quince Orchard Road. They have installed the one. There's a lot more that needs to be done. Northbound signage was promised, as was signage for the fairgrounds, as well as replacement of all language on those big green overhead signs that read Gaithersburg Historic District, and that will be switched out to Old Town Gaithersburg. Long time coming, but almost done.
All right.
That's all I got.
Good stuff.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Next, I'd like to invite Stephanie Walker, Director of Finance and Administration, to lead us in a discussion about our procurement policy. And Stephanie, is is this your last meeting with us?
It is.
Okay.
It is.
Let's first, before we start then, because Stephanie is leaving the city to, I'm not even going to talk, that's up to you to talk about what you're doing, but I just want to give Stephanie a great round of applause for her service. Thank you.
Thank you. I actually, since this is the last time I am speaking here, did want to take a minute just to thank all of you for allowing me the honor to serve for you and to serve the city. I'm sure you already know you have a fantastic team here, and it has really been enjoyable working both with and for our city manager, Tony Tomasello, and our deputy city manager, Dennis Ensingler. I can't imagine a better team helping move the city forward. So,
thank you. We greatly appreciate your service. So, with that, the last bit of public or in public service.
Moving to the procurement policy, actually, I wanted to also introduce our new procurement division chief, Frank Garlitz, who is stuck around for the evening. He started with us towards the end of last calendar year and comes to us from Baltimore County. He's taken up the challenge of completing our procurement manual, and we'll be working with the city manager to complete that.
Very exciting.
Later
Welcome.
This fiscal year. So, moving then to the procurement policy, we are recommending several wording changes. Probably the most significant is recommending to increase the purchase order limit, which is the level at which purchasers have to document multiple quotes, from $3,500 to $5,000. We took a look at all of the purchase orders for the last 2 years, and based on our transactions, we were running about 15% of our transactions were in this group, so more than $3,500 but less than $5,000. But when you total up all of the dollars of that, it's about 1% of our non-personnel related spend. So really, we have a large flow of transactions for a very small dollar value there. So when we're looking at the value of internal controls, one of the things you want to look at is how much time our staff is spending for the benefit of those controls. And so at this time, we would recommend increasing that level. Some of the other changes within the policy are primarily wording changes, retitling emergency purchase to exigency purchase, retitling purchasing method to procurement method. We would like to expand the use of the reliance on other jurisdictions to allow purchasers to rely on solicitations that were issued in 3 years rather than 2, eliminating a little bit of additional wording, clarifying some of the procurement exemptions, and then adding a exemption for employee benefits, which was missed initially. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Stephanie. We've been working on this, on fine-tuning this thing for a while, and these changes strike me as reasonable changes. Who'd like to go first from the council? Lorianne.
All right. How are you, Stephanie? Sad to see you go, but enjoyed having you here. As for the presentation, I wanted to know if the green set aside is new for the manual.
No, that is in the existing policy. Would not make any changes to that section.
Okay. Have we, I was wondering if you could explain the other jurisdictions' method of competition.
Sure. What that basically means, and many other jurisdictions in the state call it riding contracts. We've sort of retitled it. And basically, if another jurisdiction has done a solicitation that we feel matches or mirrors what we would do if we were doing it internally in the recent history, rather than having us reinvent the wheel, do the same thing, and come to the same results, we would identify, let's say Rockville just did a solicitation, find out who they had awarded the contract to. As long as they're willing to extend the same terms and pricing to us, we would then contract with them individually. The advantage to that over riding contracts is that we don't have to deal with contract provisions that other jurisdictions may have in there. We can really tailor the contract itself to our jurisdiction, but we're still getting the competitive pricing and process that they've done with less staff time internally incurred.
Okay, so no negotiation, we'll just adopt the same.
No.
Okay. And then I had a question about the difference between the sole source and the waiver process.
Sure, we actually removing the definition of sole source within the policy, primarily because we didn't ever identify a separate process for it, and so the term was just kind of hanging out there in the policy. Anything that is going to be not on the exemption list, that is not going to go through the procurement process, would fall under a waiver from the city manager, and the city manager would have to identify and verify why the purchaser was making that. And so they can't just say, oh, it's a sole source, this is why we're doing it. They have to provide a little more detailed explanation.
Would that come before the mayor and council?
No, that would go directly to the city manager, assuming it's under the threshold.
Yeah,
under the 100,000.
So it still meets the amount.
Right.
Okay. All right. And then let's see. I also wanted to ask about, I know that this county is adopting an equity lens in all of their policy making. And I was wondering if we had explored any opportunities for equity in our procurement manual. Like, are we looking at ways to, I see that we have the green system. If certain businesses are doing a green initiative, we give them more points. Are we doing that for small businesses or minority-owned businesses? Or is that something we considered for the
It's not something that we've identified within our policy, in part because right now we only have one procurement staff, and so it's just difficult for us to administer a complicated process like that. We have not forbidden it within the policy, but it's not something that we've identified as a strict yes, this will be adhered to at this time.
We did a couple of years ago, if I may interject, we're talking about what kind of little bits of additional points a bidder might get for certain types of preferences for set-asides. One of the things we talked about was, maybe if somebody could get an extra point for being a local business within the city of Gaithersburg. And what we found with staff research was there are so many different needs for services and products by the city that there really weren't all that many local businesses within the city boundary that could provide those services, and it sort of ended up, becoming a situation where it might not be so productive to have that kind of set aside for something like locally owned or located. But I don't think we had a discussion about other types of set asides.
Yeah,
I think we probably have to run it all past Lynn's office anyway, because I'm sure there's probably some limitations on what we're allowed to do. Obviously, the federal government has a robust set-aside program for minority-owned, woman-owned, veteran-owned. And I know that the state has run into a bunch of different kind of lawsuits over the years in trying to do that at the state level. So it's not entirely clear to me what our authority is on that front, but if we do have some authority, I'd support looking into that.
Yeah, because I think I thought the first bullet point on the presentation was for local businesses, and then it was the greening.
Yeah, so there's a preference in the policy for
a
local
preference.
businesses.
So that's
but I don't know how much it actually gets used, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's in there, but I'm not sure that how much of a difference it actually makes.
It is a guiding policy rather than a detailed kind of a how-to on the solicitations. Some of the tricks that you get into or difficulty you get into is how you measure whether something is local. Is it just whether they have a location that's local within the city? Is it their entire business has to be located within the city? Is it if they are just outside the city but all of their staff are city residents? How exactly do you measure that? And so that's some of the difficulty that we have with implementing those types of policies. Particularly with our staffing levels. Again, our policy doesn't disallow any of that within individual purchases. It may make more sense or less sense depending on what is being purchased. Certainly when we're doing smaller dollar purchases, just having firms respond to us in some cases, we are thankful to get more than one response. And so adding some of these additional hoops can sometimes scare off more competition than it can help.
Well, we have a scoring rubric that we use for, I guess, when they submit proposals for certain bids.
It depends on the exact purchase and what the purchase is for. When we do a sealed bid, for instance, it is solely based on, the award is solely based on price for all responsive bidders. When we do a request for proposal, that would be the evaluation criteria would be spelled out in that specific solicitation. It's going to be different if it's something, for instance, auditing services. It might be more, qualitative based versus, a little bit lower on pricing. And so it's very specific on each solicitation. We do about 30 solicitations a year, and then our procurement office will work with the purchasers to find out, what really makes the most sense for this individual purchase. So rather than having hey, it has to always look, exactly like this, as far as the evaluation criteria, it's very subjective depending on what it is that's being purchased and what fits for that industry.
Okay, because, the packet says that, we make decisions on a 100-point scale, and there may be like a 1 to 2 point advantage for local businesses, and then there's another provision for green purchasing, so there's more points for that. So are we not using a point scale for some outside of the sealed bid ones?
So the IE or 1 or 2 points on it, that's an example for a particular solicitation. It's, again, the exact weighting on how different categories will be weighted is going to be varied depending on what it is that's being purchased.
So I'm just, as Brian mentioned, I'm just wondering if it could just be another provision that's added or at least explored, and then maybe we assign a particular point system if, it's a small business, or if it meets those small minority-owned businesses, if it's something we can look into. We are one of the most diverse cities in the country, and it would be nice to have, if we have businesses that apply to do business with the city, that we, value that, so.
Absolutely. I'm sure that staff would be willing to look into that.
Okay.
Typically as we finish the procurement, the manual itself, there may be another round of changes that are, needed at that point. And so it's something that we could bring, that back at a later time.
Are we?
I can't promise to come back for it, of course.
Oh, no,
but.
of course not, but I know. Are we, but we're voting on the manual
Well,
as
if it's
is?
Well,
or-
moved
these are
and
just-
seconded, we will.
These are just amendments to an existing manual
Yeah.
that's before us right now. So yeah, we're expected to vote on those changes.
Mhm.
It doesn't mean that further changes couldn't be made later.
Okay.
Yeah, over the years, we've emphasized that the importance of supporting local businesses as much as possible, and supporting businesses within Montgomery County first, after the city, and then businesses within the state of Maryland, after Montgomery County. So I think that's always been good guidance. I think we can do other things, as we do in the grant business for the federal government. There's a line or a paragraph or a set of phrases in every grant solicitation or RFP that encourages applicants who are from underrepresented racial and ethnic groups, men or women, veterans, etc. Yeah. So I think that kind of a phrase should probably be part of every pure procurement announcement that we issue, just so that we can say, yeah, we encourage you to apply, because I think, frankly, some people are, or some businesses might be discouraged if they don't see something like that. So I think it's important to announce that we're interested in seeing bids and proposals from minority-owned, women-owned, veteran-owned businesses, local businesses, et cetera, disabled, whatever. Yeah. We can include all of those groups in that particular statement, but I think, once we're done with this, we can look at it again, and hopefully staff will come up with some ideas on how we might look at our point system and add some of these things. I think that's important. This isn't a new issue that we've talked about. We've talked about it over the years, but I think we're moving forward with this. I think this one makes a lot of sense, the changes that we see here. So.
Anybody else want to weigh in?
But of course, Mr. Mayor.
Okay,
But we'll
Neil
go that
spoke
way
up
first.
first. Go ahead.
You sneaked right in there under the procurement wire, because I'm sure that Rob will have more to say than I will. I'm just curious about looking at these thresholds. And we heard a lot over the last year from as part of some of our review processes, that people were finding the procurement process to be a little bit cumbersome. And I'm wondering if one of the areas where we can improve that is by making it a little easier by stretching some of these thresholds. I see taking us up from 3,500 to 5,000. For an organization with a budget our size, that still seems like a pretty small amount. Are you comfortable that this is enough?
I think at this point, that would be the level that I would recommend, yes. Yeah, I think incrementalism in government is not necessarily a bad thing. We moved it from 2,500 to 3,500 about 2 years ago. Moving up to 5,000, I think is a respectable level, and then revisiting that every few years.
And the $30,000 and $100,000 thresholds, you're comfortable that those are good numbers still?
I am. I think that we hit roughly 30 solicitations each year. Expanding the use of other jurisdictions, may help with smoothing out some of that. Adding the division chief position, it certainly should help streamline things as well. I think poor Frank walked in and had about 8 solicitations kind of dropped on him about the week after Thanksgiving. And I think, of which probably 6 or 7 have been returned to the departments already. So, through help with both him and the existing procurement manager who stayed on. So, they have been moving things quite a bit.
Right.
So we're hoping to continue that trend.
I guess, as we go forward and make sure that we're still, there's a fine line you want to walk between. You don't want to make it too easy and spend money that you shouldn't be spending, but you also want to keep things moving. So,
Right.
All right, thanks.
Rob.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And so my concern here, and I think you hit the nail on the head when you were talking about the implementation of social policy or socioeconomic policy, as we call it in the federal sector, which is, from my experience, and we see the ones that are above 100,000 coming in here to vote on them, we don't get a whole lot of bids or proposals on any given procurement. So I'm more concerned, I think, at this point with respect to making sure that we are receiving adequate competition for things. And then once we have adequate competition, we can talk about implementing socioeconomic policy. And I have some ideas on that as well, because that's what I deal with in part on the federal side. As far as the recommendations, the change recommendations, the one I have the most concern with is extending the reliance on other jurisdictions from 2 to 3 years. And the question I have for you is how do you ensure that prices are fair and reasonable for the current market conditions if you're relying on contract vehicles that have been awarded 1, 2, now even 3 years prior?
I think the issue we were running into is with the 2-year date, we're using it from the date of the solicitation, not the contract date. And so with the 2-year window, we were running into solicitations that had just been awarded maybe 6 months ago, as far as contracted, 6 months ago, because other jurisdictions, when they first issued their solicitation, it will take so long to get through the process. And so in some cases, we, didn't necessarily, we knew that they went out for an RFP and had the results yet, but they hadn't awarded the contract yet, and so we were still waiting with that. So the 3-year window was to help allow, a little bit more use because of the contracting period that we were seeing other jurisdictions take so long with.
So why not just shift it to date of contract award? I mean, I don't know on the state side when the fair and reasonable determination is made, but on the federal side, it's at the time of contract award.
We avoided the contract award because if people do renewals or if they just choose to do a new contract, we didn't want people just picking up something that had been solicited 10 years ago, but the contract, was a renewal of the existing contract. So we felt that using the solicitation time frame made a little bit more sense because we're looking at when the competition was solicited, not necessarily when the contract date was awarded.
I mean, do they make a new reasonable determination at the time of renewal, or are you just talking about they allow it to ride, renewing it each and every year?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
In other jurisdictions, for example, that you rely on, have you seen is there a new market research and reasonableness determination at the time of renewal, or are they relying on continuously older pricing information as the contract gets older?
Often we're not aware if there is a due diligence process around those renewals. It may be, it's just a little bit harder to find out, how robust was that? Is it something we really want to rely on?
I mean, I have concern with it. In the federal sector, we do it. You rely on other contracts that have been awarded, you order against them. Some other agencies made the reasonableness determination on pricing, but I'd be more interested in delving into the process here for just to make sure that we're receiving adequate price competition if we're using this methodology. I mean, I'll vote for it today, but I think going forward, I'd like to revisit that, perhaps talk it over with our new procurement officer. But thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Ryan, did you have anything to add? Or does someone want to move the resolution?
I'll move the resolution.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, carries 5-0. Thank you very much, Stephanie.
Thank you all.
And thank you for your good work while you've been here.
It's not too late to change your mind, by the way.
My son would disagree.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
We
you.
understand. We understand. Okay. Next, we're inviting Jasmine Forbes to the podium to lead us in our policy discussion on 700 Quince Orchard.
Thanks for the 683-page briefing on this, by the way. Oh, my goodness. No exaggeration.
It's a walk down memory lane.
But thanks for giving us the highlights in the cover sheet.
Yeah.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. This is a
evening.
policy discussion for Schematic Development Plan Application SDP-7927-2018. The subject property that is outlined in red in the aerial is located at 700 Quince Orchard Road and is zoned MXD. The applicant filed an application requesting approval for the construction of new parking facilities for the office building and 2 new streets. The applicant also included a road code waiver request and a tree removal variance. To refresh the council and the public, the joint public hearing for this application was held on September 17th of 2018, and the application that was presented at the time included a 2-level parking deck. During the course of the public hearing, there were discussions on the road code waiver for Public Street A, which is this road right here. The applicant proposed a 8-foot.
We're not seeing it yet.
Oh,
Okay,
let's see.
there you
Okay,
go.
sorry.
Mhm.
So the applicant requested a 8-foot shared use path instead of the required 10-foot. So that was what the road code waiver was for. There was also discussions about pedestrian vehicle circulation from this parking deck to the office building, and the tree variance to remove 7 specimen trees on the property. During the public hearing, there was no testimony from the public related to this application. So this application was originally scheduled to come before the Mayor City Council for policy discussion on November 19th of 2018. The applicant submitted a letter requesting that the Mayor City Council and the Planning Commissions to reopen their record. This would allow the applicant to modify the plans to include an initial phase, which is a surface lot, which I will go into detail later on in this presentation. So during the November 19th meeting, the Mayor City Council announced by motion the closing of the record on January 4th of 2019. The Planning Commission closed their record on December 28th of 2018 and made a recommendation on January 2nd of 2019. The Planning Commission recommended approval for the SDP application with 7 conditions and the associated road code waiver. The Planning Commission did recommend that the applicant incorporate additional landscaping in the surface lot to visually soften the lot and break up some of the parking, which I'll explain a little later in the presentation. So the council's record closed at 5 p.m. on January 4th of 2019. There's a total of 77 exhibits in the record, and the revised plans that we are discussing tonight are exhibits 68 to 73. So here is what the rendering was for the 2-level parking deck. So what the applicant is requesting instead of the parking deck is a surface lot. Now, I want to note that the parking deck is still part of this STP app package. The surface lot is more of kind of a phase 1 for this project. In the applicant's justification letter, due to the cost increase for the parking deck, at this time they can't build it, so they provide an alternative. So at this phase, they want to build a surface lot. So in the future, when there is a need for additional parking, they can build that parking deck, but they would need to come back for site plan approval to build that parking deck. For this plan, here's the rendering for the surface lot. So with the parking deck was built within the grades of the existing property. For the surface lot, the applicant will need to regrade some portions of the property to allow for the surface lot to work. The applicant has proposed to plant some landscaping and some trees, but it's going to be in the right-of-way. The applicant did select trees that wouldn't interfere with the existing power lines in the right-of-way, and the State Highway Administration has reviewed and gave preliminary approval for those plantings in that right-of-way, and they will look into further once they submit for final site plan. So here's another view of the surface lot. So the surface lot will contain 202 parking spaces. For this surface lot, there will only be one entrance into that ground floor parking facility in that office building. With the parking garage, in the last plan, you can see there was 2 entrances, but this one, they only need 1 entrance. And the applicant was able to gain additional parking within that parking garage, which brought them up to 105 parking spaces. For the office use, in accordance to our city code, the applicant is required to provide 450 spaces, which is that 1 space per 300 square feet per gross floor area. But pursuant to section 24-160D8A of the city code, the City Council has the authority to determine the appropriate number of spaces at SDP review, and the Planning Commission will determine the final number of parking spaces at final site plan review. The applicant has submitted a justification letter stating that, for the future tenant they're trying to gain for the office building, that the 307 spaces will work, and they mentioned that there are additional 33 parking spaces on Public Street A for visitors and the employees. They also mentioned that the office building is in close proximity of public transportation. The Planning Commission did support the proposed number of the on-site spaces for the building, and they also supported the reducing of the number of the space to accommodate more landscaping in the parking lot, because their concern is in this area there's just too much parking and the applicant is short of their 10% green space requirement for a parking lot. So the Planning Commission does support at final site plan to reduce that number of parking spaces so they can increase the amount of landscaping in that parking lot. The applicant will need to also request a waiver from the Planning Commission at final site plan for their for a 36-foot parking module. So in our code for parking module with parking spaces on one side, they can reduce the drive aisle 17 feet. For this case, on this area, the applicant is short 2 feet, but the drive aisle widths are still the same. And the Planning Commission has reviewed the vehicle turning radiuses and supports that waiver. I do want to note that in October 22nd, the applicant did submit a letter to the Mayor and City Council in response to one of the conditions that staff had included, which pertained to the dedication of Public Street A. The staff has met with the applicant, and we've kind of revised the language in that condition to kind of clarify what we're looking for the applicant for that dedication on Public Street A. Since this SDP review, staff has included additional conditions on the SDP approval, and those approvals is to ensure that the applicant will provide public right-of-way connection through the overall development and existing streets. Please note that this office, the redevelopment of this office is kind of the first step in an overall redevelopment project for 700. The next phase the applicant's going to do is a residential portion. So staff wants to ensure that the applicant provides adequate circulation on the proposed streets through the office, for the office and for the future residential development. In conclusion, staff is supportive of the proposed modifications to the SDP plan. Staff is supportive of the applicant, renovating this property for the underutilized office building, which will attract new tenants to the city. I do want to note that in the draft resolution, we did notice a minor typo in the resolution, so we just made that minor typo, but it doesn't change anything in the findings. So the draft resolutions for SDP-7927-2018 and road code waiver RC-7937-2018 have been included and are ready by separate motions for final action should the council so choose, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have this evening. And we also have the project team here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Who'd like to go first?
So what's the error that you noted if we have to modify it in moving the
It's
resolution?
page 5 in the findings. We only noted the canopy cover for, so since with the changes, the canopy cover they're providing has changed, but they're still meeting that requirement. And we only included the first phase. We forgot to include the canopy covers they're providing for the second phase. So we just included phase 1 and phase 2, but the applicant still meets the requirements for new canopy coverage.
So you mentioned that sticking with just the surface lot, there would have to be some regrading. Would that impact the ability to build future structured parking there if they did want to come back with a future amendment to put that structured parking back in?
Yeah, so when they do want to come to build in that parking deck, and if some grading has to be done, then we'll review that at the site plan review. Okay. So they'll come back with another application.
Okay. All right. This is, go ahead, Mike. This is policy discussion, so.
Yeah, so I guess, I've talked about this with other projects that we've seen in the city, and when we have a structured parking where it's wrapped by another building, I've always been concerned if that structured parking only has one access point. And what they've done with this plan in not building the deck is basically removed one of those accesses that would have come from the parking deck. It would have exited out to the ground level, and then also had access to the ramp. So I'm still very concerned about a project that has this kind of parking underneath the structure, or structured parking where there's only one access point. I think that was pointed out also in the Planning Commission's discussion of this as well. So that remains a concern. I'm not, you just never know when you're going to need that access point and that second access, and how things could get stuck in there. Anyway, I think the other question I had is, to what extent has the stormwater, no one likes, we're trying to avoid large surface parking lots. I don't think we can do that here. How is this affecting the stormwater management plan in this new plan?
So with the revisions for this phase, they had to submit revisions for their stormwater, which was reviewed by Public Works staff and was approved.
Okay, so it's adequate to handle.
So they met all the requirements for their stormwater management.
Well, so those are the issues that I have. Overall, I think the conditions recommended by the Planning Commission make sense. So anyway, I wanted to raise those concerns.
Okay.
Can I get clarification on the 61 is the right-of-way that includes the 8 multimodal path? What exactly would that
Public
look
Street A. So in our previous road code waiver, we required them to provide a 10-foot shared use path.
Okay.
But for the restrictions to the site, they can only provide an 8-foot shared use path.
Oh, okay. 8 foot.
So it's this. So this is the shared use path right here.
Does that shared use path, turn right or turn left at the end of the building and then go out to Quince Orchard Road?
So the shared use path kind of goes down here, and then
I don't see your.
Does it go to
there
the
it is, okay.
neighborhood?
so this is the shared
Yeah, I
use
see
path.
that.
Yeah.
Okay, does it turn then?
No, it
make
goes
a-
straight, and then there's another shared use path
Okay.
here.
Oh, so it meets, okay.
So there's sidewalks on either side of
Mhm.
the entry there. Okay.
Go ahead, Lorianne.
And I think you answered this question with, when Rob asked about the tree removal.
Mhm.
So you said there will be adequate amount of trees planted
Yes.
between first and second phases. Okay. And the pedestrian vehicle circulation, can you pull that part back up?
So that was for the parking garage. Staff had concerns about when someone parks on the parking garage, there was no pedestrian safety from the garage to get to the building. So with the parking garage, what the applicant did, they built a tower
Okay.
to connect to that sidewalk to provide a kind of safety. So they have to walk through the parking lot to get to this entrance. So they provided a tower so they can kind of cut through and get to the visitor's entrance on the side of the building. And then on the ground floor level, they provided cross-hatching and a sidewalk for pedestrians to walk on to get to that entrance.
Okay. So that yellow area is basically the path or the ramp to get into.
So this yellow area was the proposed two-floored parking deck. But now with this initial phase, that's they're going with the surface lot for now.
Okay. So, okay.
Yeah, but that was concerned, it was just the circulation due to the parking,
Yeah,
due to
getting in
the
and
parking
out.
deck.
Okay. So that was all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Neil?
Oh, I'm good.
Okay. Ryan? Good.
Also good.
All right. Go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you.
I thought you'd already gone.
Did I go?
Yeah, I thought so.
You were first, but go
I
ahead.
think I was just piggybacking on other people's time.
I'll count that separately. Go
Okay.
ahead. Go
I
ahead.
reserve the remainder of my time.
So, obviously we want this project to work, both from the city perspective and from our partner's perspective. And so I, with respect to the number of parking, we've got the analysis of Planning Commission and staff on, I guess, the engineering aspect of it and whether it meets requirements. Does it meet the economic requirements of the site too? And I don't want to be in a situation where, for example, we're building first floor retail with no rear end entrances and it doesn't become marketable. So I don't know who to ask that question to, maybe Tom, but not right now.
Yeah, I think I can.
Is with this part, with the reduction in parking spaces for this site caused by the removal of the garage, are we creating a situation where it
Where it's
is
not
no longer
leasable?
palatable to a tenant who wants to occupy a site?
We can let
Because
the-
you're in a site-constrained area here.
Let's let the development team address this.
Yeah, there's also some market forces at play here. It's the development team that requested the removal of the deck.
Believe me, they want to lease out the property.
Yeah, it's the same with
Andy,
the deck.
just state your
Oh,
name.
my
for the
name's
record.
Andy Gleck. I'm one of the owners of Rock Creek Property Group. It's the same amount of parking. Actually, there's a few more spaces without the deck. So we've created the same identical. It's I think we had 302 spaces with the deck, and we have 307 without the deck.
You just did more magic with space requirements.
Yes.
Okay.
We just laid it out differently. Yeah.
So does that include the 10% parking lot reduction of green space?
The waiver, you mean the waiver of the 10% requirement?
That's
Yes.
beyond my pay scale.
Yeah, because it was waived down to 7.5%, at least that's the proposal, right?
They, I know the applicant did want to request a waiver but the planning commission would like for the applicant to break up that parking lot. So the planning commission is willing to support a plan if it's going to provide more landscaping on the property.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead, please.
Mike Goodman with VICA, for the applicant. The 307 spaces that we have in front of you right now does not address the Planning Commission's concern. So there will be a hopefully slight reduction in the amount of parking as part of the final site plan.
Right.
Okay.
Which the planning commission will have before them.
That's right.
I mean, the planning commission, if we approve it at this level, planning commission and the applicant only have so much space to work with to find parking should there need to be adjustments. So that's my concern, is just that we're making sure that this is going to be a marketable site based on people that need to park their cars there.
Yeah, although, I mean, the trend lines and a lot of the policy decisions that we've made in recent years have been towards
reducing
less
parking,
parking
right.
on these sites because historically, the way these sites have been designed 20, 30, 40 years ago generates an excess of unused parking and asphalt and impervious surface and all the bad environmental impacts and land use impacts. I take your point, Rob. I think we want to make sure that we don't build a site that has so few spots that it ends up becoming a problem. But I think the flip side of that is we've built, historically sites, and everybody's built historically sites, especially these sort of traditional office park, suburban office park type sites with far too many parking spaces. And that may end up being the case even with the 307 spaces proposed for this lot.
No, I mean, okay. I mean, maybe if BRT was running by here.
Well, I think,
soon,
if you look at the BRT plan, the
Yeah.
CCT plan, this building is almost halfway in between two stations of that line
Perfectly
that
situated.
crosses,
Yeah.
that is on Quince Orchard Road. So I think that's part of that's reasonable justification, I think, to reduce the parking and hope that people will use transit. Also, we're building,
The
we have a
NISPAC.
mixed-use community in a couple of areas and probably
We got the NIST path right across the street.
close by, so,
That's right.
hopefully people will live where they work. So
Yes.
we'll have more pedestrians walking to this site or biking to it than they would be
Yeah.
driving a car. So
Yeah.
the question is, where are the bike parking?
That comes in the final
Sort of,
details.
sort
right?
of. I also noticed that this is one of the first plans we've seen with angled parking on the outdoor lot there. We haven't seen that in a lot of plans. In fact, we didn't see that in the first plan here. So I guess that's used to kind of restrict, to allow some more drive lane space as well, right? So I think we should probably use that more often in the city.
It probably also
Okay,
encourages.
I mean-
It probably also encourages people to comply with the traffic
direction
flow,
of
with
traffic.
the traffic flow of
Right.
one way, one lane.
Rob, were you finished?
I'm done, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Thank you.
And let me just also say, in response to Rob, I mean, I kind of jokingly said earlier, there's market forces at play here, but that's true, right? I mean, an applicant is theoretically, if they're reasonable and rational, going to want to make sure that the design is sufficient to attract a good tenant, so that I think put some faith in the invisible hand that they're not going to want to create a parking situation that's so unworkable that no tenant is going to want to use it. So there's that at play as well. So.
I would note that the buildings, the research spaces that are occupy First Field have large parking, and I drive by there twice a day going to and from work. And those lots are never full in any of the buildings that are fully occupied. So I'm less concerned about the total number. This one seems more reasonable.
So do you want to move the resolution?
Didn't I already do that? No, I'll move the resolution.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And that's with the 7 conditions, I assume, 'cause
Yes.
that's the one before us, yes.
Okay. Did we?
Now, do we have to separately
getting
vote on the
proactive.
road code
Okay.
waiver?
Yes.
We have to separately vote
For the
Okay.
road waiver.
So the first resolution passes.
All right, so I'll move.
5-0. Okay.
I'll move approval of the road code waiver RC 7935-2018.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Okay. 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nice work, Jasmine.
Yes. We congratulate the property owners, development team, and wish them great luck in leasing it out. Thank you, guys. Do we have anything from from city attorney? Any other staff? Okay.
I have a quick.
Please go ahead.
So I heard from my friend John Shine, who is the manager of Beyond Comics up on North Frederick, that his wife had a comment on the proceedings of our last council meeting because she was watching it on TV. So I promised her a shout out. So Kate Powell Shine, thanks for watching. We'll see you again next time.
Wow. Go to a comic book. Shocking. But this is very, very local.
That was Beyond Comics.
I wanted to wait till the very end to make sure she watches the whole thing.
Very local. Okay, as I mentioned, we do not have a work session next week. The next regular session of Mayor and Council will be held on Monday, February 4th. Until next time, let's do great things, Gaithersburg. We are adjourned.